Hey, what's going on, guys? So, using synth bass to enhance a string arrangement is not a new concept by any means. It's actually kind of become commonplace over the last, 20 years or so. Many scores feature synth and synth bass as a way to enhance the low end of an orchestra. But not all synth bass is created equal. And I think it's a testament to Moog that people are still willing to fork out $3,500 for a monosynth. The Model D, it's not all about nostalgia. There truly is something special about the sound, and in particular, the bass tone. It is wonderful. Anyway, I'm going to kind of go over this very minimal track that I put together a long time ago and explore the different ways that we can apply scoring synth bass to enhance this track, because although, using bass to fill out low end is a very simple idea in theory, there's a lot of different ways we can approach this. If we want it to be subtle or do we want it to be very bold, there are a lot of different factors here. So I'm going to try and explore all of these things, but I guess let's just start by listening to the track on its own, and then I'll just dive in and start mixing in scoring synths. So let's take a listen. Okay, so the bass isn't bad in this track, but it's certainly nothing special. It's kind of pillowy, if that makes sense, and I want to make it much better. So let's start by just cutting everything below 60 hertz or something, 75 hertz. I don't know what we got there. I'm going to open up scoring synths here. Okay, so this track is extremely dynamic, which is good because it's going to present an opportunity for me to show you how, maybe at the start of the track, one bass will work, but by the time you get to the climax, you'll need to supplement with another kind of bass or whatever. All right, bass solo 1. Let's play it and see how it sounds in context with the track here. Okay, so you can hear that that's already a little bit too aggressive. The track starts off very kind of sweeping, and this has got too much aggression in the attack, which could be okay if that's what you want, but I think it sounds a little bit too jarring in this context. So there's a lot of different ways we can approach this. One would be to automate the level to just kind of make it swell and be less abrupt in the attack. So I'll just do that real quick. Okay, so even that didn't quite achieve what I was going for. So perhaps what would be a better sound would be a low pad, which would kind of follow that dynamic of the low string. So let's take a listen to how that sounds instead. Okay, so that's sounding better, but I think there's a little bit too much fundamental with just the DI. The bass sounds nice and full, but it sounds a little bit detached from the strings. And in this context, at least in the beginning, I just kind of want to enhance the low strings. I don't want to have the synth bass be a completely separate entity. I just want it to kind of fill it out and not really notice it. So let's pull up the Decca, bring down the DI, and see how that sounds. Okay, so what can be particularly useful in a track like this where you start off very minimal? I've just got the low strings, and then by the, climax of the track, I've got all the strings, brass, choir, whatever, is I might want to start off the track with mostly Decca, so you're not noticing it. But the denser the mix gets, the more the bass is going to get lost. So what I'll often do, rather than cranking up the Decca, I will fader ride the DI in. So what this does is it makes the bass more clear, not just more loud, which can be exactly what I want. Another thing to think about in terms of using synth bass with strings is how you want the actual shape of the attack and the sustain and all this stuff. Sometimes it can be cool to have a very aggressive low bass sound. It's more of a production effect than enhancing the strings, but let's take a listen to how these stabs sound. What I would probably do in this context is have the beginning of the track start with just the pads. Keep it very subtle. And then make the bass sound more aggressive the further we evolve in the track. So then I might move to one of the bass solos here, and then eventually go to the stabs where you get this transient of bass that really punches through the mix. So something I forgot to mention as far as the bass solos go. So the bass solos are single waveforms, and we've got all 7 from the Model D. And if you were to cycle through those, you would hear a tonal change that's very similar to the kind of tone switch on a bass guitar. And when you listen to them on their own, it could be very hard to determine which one would work in context. So you kind of just have to experiment and see which you prefer. But let me just show you the difference between bass solo 1 and bass solo 2, for example. So that one's very sub-heavy. Okay, so, this is a very crude example because I'm having to kind of do this in real time. When you're dealing with bass and having it fit right, it's a very delicate process. So you'd want to fine-tune the automation and figure out which instrument works best where, and a delicate balance between the mics and all of that stuff. But I hope you guys get the idea.